Let's talk education. Hi there. I am Alina and I cultivate family enrichment through student remediation and parent support services. And in this episode of Let's Talk Education, we are continuing with our four-part series that supports parents in understanding how to support their kids in a virtual learning environment. In this COVID recovery world, hey, we're spending a lot more time online. Our schools here locally in Trinidad and Tobago are still closed, and we need to be able to do our best to be able to support our kids as they learn from home in a virtual space. So today I'm going to be sharing with you guys, moms, dads, aunties, uncles, and everybody else viewing, some tips about learning strategies for children when learning virtually. And the first thing we want to be able to establish is that we want to understand what is now required of us now that we're learning virtually. We're no longer getting up and having to take the taxi or have the driver pick us up or take the maxi to go to school and then have the teacher say, okay, kids, bell time. We don't have any of that anymore. So definitely the learning practices and the expectations are very different. And we need to not only understand it, but parents, you must communicate. Granted, we're in the middle of the school term now. So I hope for most of you looking, you have already communicated. But for those of you who haven't, it's not too late. And this video is going to definitely give you some practical guidelines on how you can help your kids in a virtual learning space. So we want to understand what is required in virtual learning. What does this mean? One, we definitely want to be mindful that we have to be committed because we're not in a physical classroom where a teacher could touch us to grab our attention anymore. So we now have to be committed and willing to participate. The kids have to be willing to participate in a virtual classroom space and not take it for granted that we're just going to click, log on, and check out mentally. No. And parents, you have a huge role in this, in your communication with your kids to help them understand the importance and the difference. We want to avoid saying things like, oh my gosh, it's hard. No, it's not hard. It's different. Let's use that word. Different is a nice word. It's definitely different. And as we stay committed, it would help us to navigate through some of the bumps and humps we might come across because for many, it's a very new experience. And the moms and dads, truth is, we have to be willing to become just a little bit tech savvy. If it is, we have to make sure our children are competently navigating through the online learning system. We don't get to continue to say, for those of us who used to say it, that's not for me. I'm not into the computer thing. That kind of is not a luxury anymore, moms and dads. We have to become a bit tech savvy. Fortunately, we live in a virtual world where digital spaces are so filled with information. Something as simple as going to YouTube and typing how to can give us so much great information and tutorials and blogs and vlogs. Hey, there's a lot of information out there. So if you feel alone, like you don't have anybody to really guide you, listen, at a minimum, go online, do some research, Google, YouTube, whatever. Do some research. You're definitely going to be much more prepared. And be willing to work with your school administration, your teachers, and even work with your child, moms and dads, in a different way. It's not going to be the same. It doesn't mean it's hard. It doesn't make it impossible. And it does not have to be stressful. But we do have to be mentally and emotionally prepared to know, here's what. This is going to be a very different experience. And once we could challenge ourselves to really receive that, accept it, and commit to making this different experience work, it sort of releases a lot of the frustration. Yeah? Because keep in mind, you still have to complete your learning tasks. You still have to do your assignments on time. You still have to be disciplined. Instead, now, there's a greater requirement for self-discipline. And again, moms and dads, remember, we have to communicate. You have to encourage your kids, and you want to be mindful of the words that you use, because we can't on one hand be telling our kids to do all the great things and all the positive things, But when we're in our conversations, man, we're being so negative. Oh my gosh, I'm so stressed. I can't wait for this to be over. Hey, our kids learn from us, not just by what we say, but by how we operate, how we conduct ourselves. So be careful of the example that you're setting, because if we're not willing to do these things, chances are online learning is going to be a really frustrating experience, and we don't want that. So let's take time to understand the different approach that is now needed and commit to making it work. It's very doable. Believe me, it's doable. You can do it, mommies, daddies. You can do it. Know that. You can do it. It's going to be okay. But you have to stay committed. You have to put your best foot forward and be willing to just go through the process and be determined this is going to succeed. Yeah? So I want to talk about internet access, because when we start getting into the online classrooms, we then start having glitches and we have challenges. And whether you're tech savvy or not, that could be such a headache type experience, I know. But what I want to encourage you, one quick little tip I want to give you regarding your internet access is that you need reliable internet access. Reliable internet access means that you don't just want to pay attention to your download speed, which is usually associated with streaming and being able to, let's say, watch your movies on your smart TV, and you're downloading to look at your videos on your computer. But when it comes to online learning, because your video in the video meetings and in the webinars and different things, you want to also pay attention to your upload speeds. Yeah. Generally speaking, keep in mind when we start talking about upload speeds and so on, be mindful that it's not just about calling your internet service provider to find out what is the upload speed, but you also want to compare your upload speed to the devices in your home. So let's say you have a plan with your internet service provider that probably has like maybe 5 megabytes per second or 10 megabytes per second. And we say, hey, we have a great package. I have 10 megabytes per second as my upload speed. It's only great depending on how many devices you have connected. Remember, when we start talking about internet, we're starting to talk about bandwidth. And the more devices you have loaded, think about it as a road. If you have one car on a road, hey, that car could speed and go. But if you have 5 cars on that road driving in a direction all at the same time, you have to drive a little slower to make sure you don't get in an accident. And it's kind of similar how the upload speeds and so on work, where if you have a lot of devices, let's say you have a whole mommy, daddy, and 2 kids, you have four of you. Each of you have a cell phone. That's 4 devices that are connected to your Wi-Fi. Then you maybe have a computer and a tablet, or computer and 2 tablets. You've gotten to 7 devices. Then you probably have a smart TV. That's 8 devices. And any other device or camera system or anything else that you might have at home that you're connecting to the internet. And even more, if you give your neighbor your password, your neighbor is connected, your upload speed is going to be super slow. Your download speed is going to be really, really slow, because you just have a lot of devices connected to your internet package. So be mindful of that. If you're sticking, you're dropping, it's buffering, it's freezing, you're continuously having challenges with your internet, pay attention to the amount of devices. You may have to reduce it, or maybe consider upgrading your package if you can. Alternatively, you can liaise with your internet service provider so that they could advise you whether, for what you're doing, whether your package is sufficient, whether you're having problems with the line. Work with them to work it out. But you definitely need a reliable internet access to be able to successfully move on. Yeah? Have a dedicated study space. Can't emphasize this enough. A dedicated study space is more than just saying have a space that you could sit down. But you want to have a place that you could sit, but you want to make sure that space is clutter free. You want to make sure it's a space that's comfortable, a space that doesn't have a lot of noise and distractions, and a space where you can work for certain amounts of time, whether it's an hour or 2 hours at a time. And a space that is familiar, and I want to emphasize again, comfortable. Of course, comfortable is not sleep comfortable, guys. Comfortable is just comfortable enough that you can sit and stay alert. You want to have a dedicated space for your kids. It brings their minds into focus, and they're going to be able to move on with their work and getting their learning done. Make sure you identify learning objectives and goals. And based on this, you can build your study plan. And when we start talking about learning objectives and goals, it's more than just recognizing your term outline, but what are you trying to achieve? What study skills are you trying to develop this term? How often are you going to check in with your school teacher? How often are you going to check in with your school administration? Make sure you have identified your learning objectives and goals so that when you build a study plan, you can identify this is my in class time, this is my homework time, this is my study time, this is my practice time. Listen, those things won't go away just because we're learning virtually. All those things continue. So you want to make sure we have a written plan. And if you need a written plan, you don't have one, email in us at educationandsuccesscoach@gmail.com, and we'll be happy to send you a template that you can use for your study plan. Reach out to your teachers. Ask for help when you need it. And moms and dads, this is not just for your kids, this is for you too. Because sometimes you need help in understanding how to help your child. So make sure you ask for help when you need it. And remember, review, revise, and redo. Review, revise, and redo. Because you want to make sure that you're not just going through and having classes, but you are learning and you are learning meaningfully. Don't forget to take your breaks, and remember, when you have a great plan for your learning, you can achieve awesome goals and have great results at the end of the academic term. So this has been Let's Talk Education. Of course, my name is Alina Lewis, and I cultivate family enrichment through student remediation and parent support services. It's been my pleasure to be bringing this series to you. Let's Talk Education, looking at the impact of virtual learning on our kids. Stay in touch. There are more episodes to come.